We give hundreds and hundreds of tours every year. And usually they always say, I never knew all this was here.
Mining is multifaceted. From underground to surface mines, it's commonly thought that work sites are in remote or rural locations. But that's not always the case. You can have the best of both worlds. All the benefits of living in a city while working in a mine. We're taking the relatively short trip on this episode to see the ore next door and see what jobs lie in the future of urban mining. Picture a mine and the area surrounding that mine. Now, you probably pictured a remote location, pretty far away from a bustling city. That makes a lot of sense. After all, we can't choose where the minerals we're looking for are. While most mining activities that come to mind are in more remote places, there's actually a whole segment of the industry designed to be near or even inside city centers. It's quite aptly called urban mining.
When I think of urban mining, I think about two contexts. One is traditional mining activities, mining and quarrying activities that occur in an urban setting. So very close to population centers, very close to commercial centers, and how do we design and optimize those while respecting and honoring our neighbors? Another aspect, another context is looking at the enormous resource that comes from trash or waste that comes out of urban living activities.
There are some obvious benefits to both circumstances. Recovering materials from existing products is getting to be more and more common, especially since we're using more devices and replacing them more often. This has led to the amount of e-waste going up. It rose 21% in just 5 years to a record high of 53.6 million metric tons in 2019. Instead of simply disposing of the devices in a landfill and acquiring new raw materials, we can send them to a depot and recover resources like gold, silver, copper, or even palladium from discarded electronics.
When I think about how folks think about urban mining, a lot of people think about the Flintstones. That unfortunately gives our industry such a kind of an old school rap. People think that potentially it's a mystery. They don't know what's going on.
In truth, the most common materials mined near or even in urban centers are those that are needed for industries nearby.
We are extracting these materials and converting it into a product that can be used in concrete and asphalt and is used in our downtown Atlanta market to help support the growth of the infrastructure, whether it's bridges or buildings or houses, condos.
Companies like Luckstone produce crushed stone, sand, and gravel that are needed in construction and civil engineering, and they are all produced at their locations near or in urban centers.
Where do you think most of the construction activities happen across the United States? A lot more of that happens in metro or urban areas than what happens in rural areas. So you can either be intentional about trying to target a metropolitan area like that to help support the growth and the health of the infrastructure and the building and the customers and construction companies who are a part of this. Or there's this complete other way where it happens where the urban area kind of just comes to you. And I think, for example, we have a site up in Northern Virginia that once upon a time when we started extracting material there 90 years ago, or just under 90 years ago, it was just forests and fields all around us. And fast forward to 2022 from the 1930s, and next thing you know, is as much expansion and growth as that area has had in the past, the urban area finds you.
And it makes sense to seek out where demand is. It makes moving supply that much easier for a business. Urban sprawl has been happening since industrialization started in the United States, and it's a trend that continues. As urban centers spread out, they need materials to support the growth.
The most common commodity being mined in these city centers is crushed stone for aggregates and for construction purposes. So when you look around a city, you should notice there's a lot of concrete, there's a lot of asphalt, there's roads and structures and buildings. All the raw materials for those structures come from mines and come from quarries. And what has to happen to deliver that material is you have to mine it somewhere close to where it's being used. The material itself, it's not a very valuable commodity, so you just can't afford to ship it more than 20 or 30 miles.
Transportation is expensive, and that expense is going to continue to grow. Why not shorten the journey as much as possible?
Be intentional about trying to target a metropolitan area like that to help support the growth and the health of the infrastructure and the building and the customers and construction companies who are a part of this.
There's another aspect about urban mining we haven't discussed yet: the proximity to people and how it emphasizes the need for solid community connections.
We give hundreds and hundreds of tours every year, and I can always get a kick out of when you're bringing folks in, you're in a van and you're driving through our operations. Usually they always say, I never knew all this was here. When you drive into the pit, where we're mining the rock out of the ground, and you're seeing a massive excavation, you're seeing all this geology that's going down, potentially several hundred feet into the ground. And folks are seeing the level of thoughtfulness and the level of engineering and the level of care that we take in what we do. I think folks are generally very surprised.
I mean, it's one thing if your neighbors are the inhabitants of a forest. It's another thing if you're operating machinery close to where people live.
When you're in an urban environment, you are extremely close to these communities, and your neighbors are oftentimes just outside your gates or close to your property lines.
Urban mines help provide the raw materials that we use to expand our cities and landscape our yards. From aggregate, which we use in construction, to the crushed stone in your garden. Luck Stone is one of the companies that operate in and around city centers, with one location only half a mile from the Atlanta airport. They have to be mindful of the impact they're having on the surrounding area.
We are not only very regulated from an environmental and blasting and land use perspective, but we also take a lot of pride in exceeding those expectations. And it's very common for us as an organization to self-impose restrictions that would limit our impact to the environment to significantly less than what our permits even allow.
And that's a good practice to have, since the neighbors are right next to your site.
When you're in an urban environment, you are extremely close to these communities, and your neighbors are oftentimes just outside your gates or close to your property lines.
And it's not just residential communities they have to deal with.
This site that we're at today, we are that case. We have dozens of residential neighbors on one side and dozens of commercial neighbors on the other side. And that's really important for us because we want to be open and honest and transparent, but also safe for these neighbors. And if you're going to be in close proximity, education and community outreach and interacting with these communities as much as possible and being part of meaningful organizations to let the community know you and to be a part of the community is really important to maintain those relationships.
While they can't let you borrow a cup of sugar, urban mining companies show their neighborly spirit in other ways.
Whether it's supporting charitable foundations, whether it's volunteering at the local YMCA, whether it's letting our community members come in and use our facilities for meetings. If I really had to kind of summarize it, Luck does such a nice job of looking at each community and really trying to figure out what does each community need, because it's different in every community. And then wherever that need is, we try to rally around that and see if we can be a positive force there.
We believe that our impact, it goes beyond just providing the materials that help to grow the markets and the communities in which we live. We are a part of the community, not only geographically, but a lot of times with our workforce and the associates that work with us on a daily basis. And so it's really important for us to be as active and involved in these entire ecosystems as we possibly can.
Because one of the interesting things about mining, unlike many other industrial activities, is it's a temporary use of land. The mine will not last forever, and we understand that, and that needs to be a core principle in our mine design, is that it is a temporary land use. And so after mining is over, we have to have a plan, a very solid plan for how we intend to remediate that land and then promote it for its next useful life.
As part of their community relations, Luckstone is also committed to supplying goods that can help prevent or reverse environmental damage.
If there's a stream bed that has severe erosion, we create materials that can restore that stream bed and help line it and prevent it in the future. And we also create other soils and products that can be used to help infiltrate the water rather than, which is so common today, allowing water to run off to concrete ditches and culverts and allow it to be soaked and used into the property that we have.
Jobs in urban mining, when you think about where the world is going and what we've seen, probably the number one thing that we see that's changing is just the use of technology, the use of data.
Mining looks a little different than the rail carts and pickaxes of yesteryear. In fact, quarrying dates back to ancient Egyptian times, when hammers and chisels were used to extract bronze and iron from the Earth's surface to construct everything from structures to ceremonial pipes. Of course, the tech, methodology, and impact has changed a little since then.
When I think about our mobile equipment mechanics, when they used to work on a piece of mobile equipment in years past, it was much more about turning a wrench. Today's mobile equipment is so much more complicated. They spend just as much time with a laptop connected to the equipment to try to diagnose what might be the problem. And then from there, it still involves a lot of mechanical aptitude, and there's still a very mechanical nature of the job, but technology is such a big part of everything that's changing our industry.
And as with other parts of the industry, urban mining sites are incorporating this technology and transforming into what are known as smart mines.
One very interesting approach to automation in urban mining settings is actually the use of drones. And I think in the last decade and in the last 5 years, we've seen a huge push to incorporate drones into the mining process and into the analysis process. And if you're looking at a site, they may have dozens of stockpiles.
What used to be a manual job, where interns or students would climb up the piles of material and measure them, not only did this end up taking hours, but it could also be hazardous. Fortunately, the process is much safer and faster thanks to drones.
And they can use sophisticated imagery technology to measure the volumes of those stockpiles. And then the drone will fly back to its house, dock itself, and then report all the data, and you've instantly got a readout of your stockpiles. The other thing that drones are being increasingly used for is also safety applications. So when we're evaluating mining structures and high walls and slopes, drones can fly over them, take very detailed and very accurate images of them, and engineers can assess that to determine stability and if there's going to be safety issues.
Safety is an absolute must when we're talking about operations in urban centers. With civilians so close to the equipment, you have to make sure accidents don't happen.
I think that automation is something that's going to only increase and improve in terms of presence and use at mine operations.
By their very nature, urban mines are close to populated areas. This means there's even more pressure on them to ensure safe operation, even when the machines are automated.
In majority of our facilities, we run fully automated plants. So our plants are crushing rock all through the night typically. They do this with no one on site, and there's enough intelligence in the plant to know what to do when certain things happen.
And the technology is playing a large part in improving safety. Just ask Dr. Emily J. Haas.
I think that automation is something that's going to only increase and improve in terms of presence and use at mine operations. Automation is introduced in terms of maintaining that safety culture. Whether you're trying to comply with a lower exposure or you're introducing a new piece of technology or automation, you want to build in that time to really talk with the workforce about first how it's going to impact their job.
Improving or incorporating automated solutions doesn't mean there are fewer jobs.
I would argue that it makes their job even more important because they're the ones who are going to be monitoring some of these technologies, and they have to be able to have a whole new level of situational awareness and communicate with other people about how this technology is interacting with other workers and other equipment. Workers are still going to have a very important role in the mining industry as we still continue to integrate new technologies.
Coming technology, especially in the mining sector over the next decade, is really generating value from the data that you're collecting. And I think in a lot of industry, you're seeing this push for more use of machine learning, data analytics, artificial intelligence, and the mining sector is just on the cusp of that.
So what can people do in an urban mine? It's pretty obvious that there's going to be a need for programmers, engineers, and scientists. And if you were considering a career in mining, but didn't want to commute or live far from a metropolitan area, urban mining might be the right fit.
If you like the idea that you can live near a city, you can live near, where there's entertainment and there's things to do, but at the same time, you don't want to sit behind a desk every day. You want to be outside. You want to really collaborate and work with a lot of folks with a lot of different perspectives. If you love big challenges, you love big equipment. When I think about coming into this industry to begin with, I started learning about blasting, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, and really has been a fun part of our careers here at Luck. And then really trying to do all that with this challenge of doing that in concert with our community and everybody that's around us. Because, urban mining, we're not isolated. We're not out in the middle of nowhere. We're doing all of this really cool activity with our neighbors right beside us.
But what about the future workforce? How are they finding their way into the industry? Well, Dr. Aaron Noble encourages his students to explore, answering their questions and correcting any misconceptions they have.
In my position, I get to work a lot with undecided freshman engineering students. So students who are still exploring what their future may be and what type of engineering field they may want to pursue. Many times I talk to these students on a one-on-one basis, and I get to hear what their real questions and concerns are. And some of the more common ones I hear is, mining? Do we still do that in this country? And to them I say, yes, we do. And we do it at a very large scale, and we have a very vibrant and robust mining industry.
And people from all different backgrounds are encouraged to enter the industry. Everyone starts somewhere.
Once upon a time, I did not know anything. I did not know a rock quarry existed. The only machines that I would see are the ones that were in the highway. When I started here, I was on the shovel. I was a laborer. When Luckstone came in, they moved me to Surface Miner 2, which was, I was able to run and operate the plant, run equipment, and etc. As right now, I am currently a lead, and I'm looking forward to reaching for the stars.
As with any industry, there's room to grow and expand.
There's great opportunities here. You have the chance to learn something that you've never seen and really don't know the background of. Because when I first came here, this is my first time in mining, and I really knew nothing about a rock quarry until I got here. And just taking the time to learn this stuff is very interesting. There's a lot going on daily, and we do it the safest way we can.
Urban mining is pretty similar to its rural cousin. In terms of employees, they're going to need engineers, scientists, and many others to continue operating in the future. And like many other parts of the industry, they're moving towards automated solutions. The big difference is? Well, urban mines exist in highly populated areas, but as our cities continue to grow, you can be sure that urban mines will be there to help build the cities of tomorrow. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Kristen Morand, and we'll see you on the next episode as we explore the jobs of tomorrow.